I'm going to be flying with easyJet today, and I'm turning it into a first-class experience. How's that possible, you may ask? I'm paying for all of the extras. I'm talking about fast track, lounges, priority boarding, seat 1A, paying for the seat next to me to be empty, champagne, and yes, what's more first class than caviar? I'm starting my journey with easyJet from Gatwick, but I'll also be doing the same with Ryanair from Stansted and Wizzair from Luton. Stick around to the end to see how much everything costs and which of these low-cost carriers offers the best first-class experience. Okay, so I usually make videos of first class and business class flights, showing all the details of the luxuries, from the airport lounges to the comfortable seats to the onboard dining, and that's great, but after a recent flight with easyJet, where I was battling with the website to avoid all the extra charges and sitting in the back corner, I wondered to myself, in true Flyman Yan style, how luxurious can you make easyJet? And for those not from Europe, easyJet is an ultra low-cost carrier, similar to Spirit in the States or Malaysia's AirAsia. Like most low-cost carriers, the ticket prices are typically fairly cheap, but you'll be paying extra for anything else. easyJet serves over 150 destinations on their route network, served exclusively using Airbus A320 family aircraft. It's the largest airline in the UK by fleet size and passengers carried, and their largest base is London Gatwick Airport, where we're starting our journey today. So I've just made it to Gatwick Airport. I bought an easyJet ticket to Budapest a few days ago for £44, which I think is fairly reasonable, and I've paid for all the extras. So I'll keep a running total on the side and let's see how fancy we can make this. Let's go. easyJet is by far the most dominant carrier in Gatwick's North Terminal, with almost all flights out of here being operated by easyJet. It's actually not too busy this morning, and there are plenty of self-service bag drop machines. But since I paid for priority boarding, I can use the dedicated easyJet Plus counters, which had no queues. I'm hand baggage only on this trip though, so I got my boarding pass printed and made my way up to departures. Okay, so normally I'd be queuing up here in the regular security, but I paid for fast track, so let's go save some valuable time and go this way. Oh, and I've got something a bit unusual to show you after security, so stick around to see that. As you can see, there are no queues here compared to the regular security channel. I saved a bit by paying in advance, so let's add £6 for fast track security to the running total and I'll get myself airside. And even though my bag got pulled for a secondary check, my timer shows I was able to get through in 4 minutes and 38 seconds. So I've just made it through security and I'm in the main terminal area, but instead of waiting on these hard plastic chairs, let's go find a lounge. To be fair, Gatwick's North Terminal is fairly spacious. It wasn't too busy and there was enough spare seating in the main terminal area to go around. The plastic seating even had UK power outlets at almost every seat, including USB-A and C charging, so big thumbs up to Gatwick here. There's a wide range of shopping and dining options spread over 2 floors, and of course, the classic airport Wetherspoons. I'm making my way to the lounges, but if you're after aircraft views, I'd recommend grabbing a window seat at Wagamama's. Anyway, the North Terminal has 6 lounges available, 5 of which I can access. I've chosen the Gateway Lounge today because unusually this is branded as an easyJet lounge in partnership with No1 Lounges. Airport lounges and low-cost carriers are not two things you usually hear in the same sentence. This has got to be the only low-cost carrier branded lounge in all of Europe, maybe the world? Access is complimentary for anyone traveling on an expensive full flexi fare. I'm not, so let's add £34 to the total. Now, let's see what's on offer in here. The lounge is fairly small and lacks views of the ramp or any aircraft, but there's plenty of natural light. The industrial design looks good, and there's this pancake maker. And while I was waiting for my pancake to cook, I checked out the buffet, which had salads, a nacho machine, that's a new one, a few hot buffet options, coffee machines, a soft drink dispenser, self-pour spirits, and self-serve draft beer taps. With a poorly poured beer and berry top pancake in hand, I got comfortable and waited for boarding to be announced. But before that could happen, the staff informed everyone in the lounge that they had to unexpectedly close immediately and moved us to the absolutely rammed No1 Lounge next door. They did have a stuffed bar here, so I grabbed a glass of champagne, cheers, and found a corner to relax in until boarding time. Okay, so boarding's just been announced for my flight, so I'm on my way to the gate. The lounges were pretty nice. The first one, Gateway Lounge, was pretty small, but it was fairly quiet. But the No1 Lounge was super busy, although they did have bubbles on offer, so thumbs up from me. I'm making my way up this long escalator to cross the second largest air passenger bridge in the world. I'm sure everyone who's flown easyJet from Gatwick has crossed this at some point. There's great views all around the airport from up here, and we can even see the plane we're flying on today. By the way, I'm flying with easyJet today, but I'll also be comparing Ryanair and Wizzair. So make sure to subscribe, and then I'll do a comparison to see which offers the best first class product. And here's a closer look at the A321neo we're flying on today. I'm using the speedy boarding queue to hopefully be one of the first on board, although it seemed like there were quite a lot of people who had also paid for this extra. I've got speedy boarding, which means I'll be one of the first on the flight, and hopefully that means I'll get some overhead bin space for my bags. But this did come at a ridiculous price of £53, so I'm starting to doubt whether it was even worth it, as we were held on the jet bridge like this for 15 minutes and I wasn't even close to the first in line. It felt like half the flight had speedy boarding. Eventually, we made it on board and I got into my front row extra legroom seat, 1A. So I'm here in my seat 1A. This would normally cost £25, but because I paid for speedy boarding, it brings the price down to £6. So it makes that 53 quid a little bit more palatable. So I'm just going to wait for everyone to finish boarding, and I've got a little surprise for after takeoff, which will really make this flight first class. As I waited for the flight to finish boarding, I didn't have to worry about anyone sitting next to me in 1B, as I paid for this seat too. So let's add another ticket and seat selection fee to the total. If you want to do this yourself, you simply need to pay for an extra passenger on the same booking and set the first name to extra and the last name to seat. And with boarding complete, it was time for pushback. Now that we're in the air, first things first. Let's get a little something to drink and a bite to eat. Could I have 2 glasses of Prosecco and a ham and cheese toasty, please? Thank you. Okay, so I lied in the intro. There's no champagne available to buy with easyJet, unfortunately, so we're on the Prosecco today. But don't worry, the true first class dining is coming up. I've gone for the classic easyJet ham and cheese toasty. But how can we make this more first class? Well, what's more first class than a bit of caviar? That's right, I'm topping my toasty with caviar, and please, feel free to send hate in the comments, but before you do, have a closer look at this beauty. Now, time for the taste test. If my facial expression isn't telling you enough, then you're just gonna have to try it yourself. With the first class fine dining out of the way, I just had to enjoy the rest of the flight. The legroom in the first row was great, and I could easily get out without disturbing the passenger in 1C. The seats don't recline, but that's fine, since this should be illegal on short-haul flights anyway. It was a pretty busy flight, so having the extra empty seat next to me made a big difference in terms of comfort. And the toilets? I'm not really sure what I can do to make the toilet experience more first class. It's certainly not an Emirates first class with a shower on board, but airlines like British Airways have a pretty similar setup in first class, so I guess we can kind of call it first class. Back at my seat, I was enjoying the sunset views out of the window, and even got to see another easyJet flight pass below us, which was pretty cool. another mini bottle of Prosecco, and a few YouTube videos later, the flight was starting its descent into Budapest. Okay, so that was actually a pretty decent flight. I think the thing that made the biggest difference was paying for the seat next to me so that you're not brushing shoulders with anyone and you've got that feeling of extra space. The fast track security, definitely worth it, saved about 30 minutes. The lounge, it's a nice thing to do to burn some time while you're waiting for boarding. Speedy boarding, definitely not worth it. I didn't even get a space in my overhead bin, and it cost too much. Food on board, of course it's great, got to have some bubbles, although I wouldn't recommend my caviar and toasty combination. But anyway, I'm here in Budapest. I'll be doing Ryanair next. Get subscribed, like, till next time. So, overall, this was a decent flight, and the total with all of the extras came to £232.70p. Now, let's see how Ryanair compares. Okay, so the concept is the same as last time. I usually make videos of first and business class flights, but instead I'll be flying ultra low cost carriers and seeing how luxurious I can make it. So last time I flew with easyJet, which I thought was a pretty good flight. Today I'm with Ryanair, and for the third and final part, I'll be flying with Wizzair. But for now, let's go inside and see what the Ryanair first class experience is like. Let's go. Ryanair is another ultra low-cost carrier based out of Dublin in Ireland, and probably the most well-known low-cost carrier in Europe. It's known for typically rock-bottom prices, charging a premium for anything extra imaginable, and very hard landings. They serve over 250 airports on a fleet of Boeing 737 family aircraft, and despite its home base being at Dublin Airport, Ryanair's largest base is at London's Stansted, where we'll be flying from today. Just like easyJet at Gatwick North, Ryanair dominates the list of departures at Stansted with by far the most flights. Okay, so I'm back in London, this time at Stansted Airport, which is Ryanair's largest base in the UK. I bought a ticket to Salzburg for about 40 quid, which is roughly the same price as my easyJet flight, and just like last time, I paid for all the extras. So I'll keep a running total going on the sides, and let's see how first class this Ryanair experience can be. And to be fully transparent, Stansted is my least favourite of the London airports, and Ryanair is my least favourite of the low-cost carriers, so hopefully they beat my expectations. The security at Stansted today was absolutely rammed. Just past the boarding pass check here was about an hour's worth of snaking queues. Luckily, I was able to make use of the fast track security channel, which I booked in advance for a cost of £8. The queue at Fast Track Security was considerably smaller than the regular one, but unfortunately, my bag was yet again pulled for a secondary check. And this time, there was quite a big backlog of bags to get checked, so it took me a total of 10 minutes and 25 seconds to get through. I just made it through Fast Track Security, which definitely saved me about an hour because the regular security queue was completely rammed. Although the security queue did have a few questions to ask about my jar of caviar, but I managed to keep it, so for now, let's go make it to the lounge. After making my way through the duty-free maze, I ended up in the main terminal area. It was completely packed in here. There were no spare seats in the central area. The wooden seating is surrounded by a selection of restaurants, fast food, and coffee shops, and pretty much all of these had wait times to get in as well. It was fairly chaotic here. Thankfully, I spotted the signs for the Escape Lounge, which is the only lounge available at Stansted Airport. There was a bit of a queue to get in here as well, and people were getting turned away at the door for walk-in entries since the lounge was at full capacity. I'd reserved my space in advance for a cost of $34.99, so I was let straight in. Unfortunately, since the lounge was so busy, I had to wait to be seated, and I couldn't choose where I wanted to sit. You can see just how crowded the space was. The staff walked me to a table in an area that felt more like a school canteen than an airport lounge. The plastic chairs were pretty uncomfortable, and there were no charging ports at my seat. There was a staff bar here serving wines, beers and spirits, and a selection of buffet food. It was still the morning, so there were heated English breakfast options, a few salads, and a selection of pastries. I made myself a small English breakfast plate, but I have to be honest, the taste wasn't that great. I was able to wash it down with a glass of bubbles at least, although there was no champagne here, only Prosecco, which is the case for every airline and lounge in this video. Okay, so I've just left the escape lounge, and I did in fact want to escape it. Now boarding's been announced for my flight, so I'm on my way. Let's go catch it. On my way to the gate, I spotted the Boeing 737 we were flying on today. I've got priority boarding again this time, so hopefully I managed to get some overhead bin space above my seat. And unlike easyJet, the pricing was pretty reasonable on this one. Only £27 for priority boarding and a cabin bag. So let's go. I joined the priority queue and was the first passenger in line for my flight to Salzburg. I managed to get an overhead bin space right by my seat today, and then got into my seat 1A. Since Ryanair doesn't have a bulkhead in front of row 1, the small partition wall typically at the front of the cabin, it meant I got a huge amount of legroom, which made this flight pretty comfortable. And now that everyone had finished boarding, let's get into the hazy afternoon sky, and I'll talk more about the seat cost. Okay, so I'm back in seat 1A. This was an extra £20 to reserve this seat, and then we got 1B as well, which was the ticket price plus the £20. And luckily today, no one's in 1C, but I didn't pay for that, so we got the whole row to ourselves. If you want to reserve the seat next to you on Ryanair, you need to buy an additional ticket and set the first name to Extra and the last name to Comfort Seat. Another thing to note is that now the door was closed, the legroom on the left side became a bit restricted. But since I had no one next to me, I could spread myself to the right and it wasn't an issue. Anyway, time to feast. The 2 bottles of Prosecco came to €16, about £13.65, and hopefully you don't spill your first bottle everywhere like I did. Let's go for round 2. There we go, much better. Cheers. By the time I finished cleaning up my spill, the ham and cheese panini had been heated up. This cost me €6.25, which is about £5.35. The Ryanair sandwich was definitely the best one out of the 3 airlines I was flying in this video, but after having a few bites, I felt like something was missing. That's right, let's not forget this is Ryanair first class, so let's top that off with a bit of caviar. I'll let you judge the result by my facial expression, but I can say I'm really happy no one was sitting in seat 1C today watching me scoop caviar onto my sandwich. And what about the toilets? Another normal toilet in here, nothing fancy, but does the job. Back at my seat, I was getting slightly bored, so I got tempted by the potential to win €1 million with the Ryanair scratch cards. I won't include this in the total price, as I didn't do the same on the other airlines, but I'm happy to report I'm in the draw to win the milli. So cross your fingers for me, and Ryanair might very well become my favourite airline ever. I spent the rest of the flight watching videos on my phone until we started our descent into Salzburg, which was pretty scenic. There were mountains all around. I know it's a bit of a meme at this point with Ryanair, but as I mentioned in the intro, we hit the ground pretty hard on the landing today. Although as they say, any landing where you survive is a good one, so no complaints from me. As I disembarked, I just want to mention the crew on today's flight were incredibly friendly and delivered a great service. Also, getting through Salzburg immigration was a breeze, and I managed to get on this rooftop terrace while the rest of the flight was still disembarking. Okay, so I've just made it to Salzburg and I found this really cool rooftop terrace at the airport, so I'll show you that in a second. But first, let's start at the beginning. Stansted Airport pretty much met my expectations. It wasn't great, I thought it was pretty crowded, the main terminal area was full of people, and even in the lounge it was so full that you couldn't even pick your own seat, it was allocated to you, there were no charging ports, it just wasn't that comfortable, and I think I know why it's called the escape lounge now. I thought it meant to escape from the main terminal area, but it's actually just escape from Stansted Airport full stop. The only one good thing I have to say about about it was the fast track, which saved me a good hour because regular security was absolutely rammed. Moving on to the flight, I actually really enjoyed this flight. Having row 1 all to myself made a huge difference. You've got a lot of space and you've got infinite legroom in front of you, so that was really nice. The cabin crew were incredibly friendly. I had some good chats with them. The only thing I wouldn't recommend is my ham and cheese panini with the caviar combo, but I think most normal people aren't bringing a jar of caviar with them on the plane, so thumbs up from me, and I'm going to enjoy a couple days in Salzburg now, and I'll see you on the Wizz Air flight.
Another great flight today, with the total, including all the extras, coming to £208.97. Now, let's see what Wizz Air has to offer.
Okay, so you already know the drill at this point. I've already flown with easyJet and Ryanair to see how luxurious I can make those flights, and now I'll be flying with Wizz Air to see how first class I can make that experience. Make sure to stick around to the end to see my final thoughts, comparisons, and who wins the ultra low cost carrier battle. Let's go.
And for those not familiar, Wizz Air is another European low-cost carrier based out of Hungary, and the youngest airline of the 3 I've flown. By youngest, I mean by the date the company was founded, but it also has the youngest fleet of the 3 airlines, with an average aircraft age of 5 years, compared to easyJet and Ryanair's roughly 10-year average aircraft age. Their fleet is made up of Airbus A320 family aircraft, with most of these being A321neos. And actually, Wizz Air is the largest operator of A321neos in the world. They serve over 190 airports, with their largest bases being at Budapest, Bucharest, and London Luton, where we're flying from today. Despite Luton being Wizz Air's largest base in the UK, easyJet actually operate more destinations out of here. I do have Wizz Priority with my ticket, but since I don't have any bags to drop, I've checked in on my phone and can make my way straight to departures.
Okay, so I'm back in London for the 3rd time, this time at Luton Airport, completing the trifecta of London's low-cost carrier airports. Wizz Air operate a bunch of flights from here, and I bought a ticket to Warsaw for £41. Just like last time, I've paid for all the extras, so I'll keep a running total for all the categories on the side. Let's get started and finish up this first-class battle. Let's go. The regular security looks fairly busy here today, so I've paid £7 for fast track, which places it in the middle of the 3 airports, but let's see how it compares time-wise. Start the counter.
Luton has the new security scanners installed, which meant I didn't have to take my laptop or caviar out of my bag, which should hopefully save some time. Thankfully, I made it through without being pulled for a secondary check. That's a first for this video, and the entire security process took me a total of 4 minutes and 2 seconds, making it the fastest security experience of the 3 airports.
Security was pretty smooth, and now that I've made it through, I'm going to avoid the crowds in the main terminal area and go to the No1 Lounge, which is one of 2 lounges here at Luton. Let's go check it out.
There are a few shops and restaurants just past the duty-free section, which then opens up into the main terminal waiting area. It's not the largest waiting area, and it was fairly busy, but there was still enough space to grab a seat. It's more plastic seating here, without any charging ports at the seats, but there are sockets available for use dotted around the airport. I walked past all of this and made my way to the No1 Lounge, which can be found near gate 17. I reserved my space here in advance, and the cost was £38. It's actually a fairly small lounge, but it wasn't too busy, and I thought the design was great. I loaded up with some food from the buffet, grabbed a glass of Prosecco from the staffed bar, and got comfortable in a seat in the corner. My plate might not look the best, but the taste of the beef curry was actually pretty decent, and the Prosecco was too. Otherwise, I enjoyed a few more glasses before it was time to go to the gate.
Just finished up in the lounge, and I thought it was pretty decent, and despite how small it was, the quality of the furnishings was really high. But for now, let's go to the gate. It's time for boarding.
And here's the A321neo we're going to be flying on today.
Priority boarding with Wizz Air today cost a crazy £67, which is miles ahead of what I paid on Ryanair, and just a little bit more than easyJet. The only positive thing is that on top of the cabin bag, you do get 20 kilos of hold luggage, so it's not quite comparable to the other airlines, but it was the only way to get priority boarding, so I'm going to count it.
And actually, it turns out I was wrong. There is a way to get priority boarding without paying for hold luggage, but Wizz Air intentionally hides this on their website, showing you what they call Wizz Go first, which makes it seem like the luggage comes with it, but if you decline and go to the next page, then you get the option for Wizz Priority without the extra bag. This is a dark UI pattern intended to get passengers to spend more, so thumbs down here, and I'm including the full price in the total because of it. It's a real shame because otherwise Wizz Air has the best website of the three. Anyway, I got in the priority lane at my gate, and I'm glad I got in near the front. I heard the gate staff mention there were 150 passengers with priority boarding today, which is crazy considering there are 239 seats on the aircraft. So over half the passengers had paid for this, and unless you're at the front, it's not gonna feel very priority. Luckily, since I was at the front, I got on early enough to get an overhead bin space close to my seat, and then got settled into my seat 1A for the final flight of this journey. Again, there's a great amount of legroom in the first row. It really does make quite a noticeable difference not having a seat in front of you restricting your movement. And whatever you think about the colour scheme, I thought the Wizz Air seats were the most comfortable ones out of the three airlines. Once everyone had finished boarding, we made our way to the runway and escaped the rainy London clouds.
Back in my throne today, seat 1A, and this costs me £19.50, and then plus we've got 1B, so double the ticket price and double the seat selection fee.
And to reserve the seat next to you for extra space is a bit more complicated with Wizz. You buy the extra ticket during booking, set the first name to EXST, and the last name to the same as your own last name. But then, you need to call up customer services to get them to confirm it and mark it as an extra seat in their system. Now, time to indulge in one last sandwich. They didn't have the ham and cheese baguette available on today's flight, so I had to settle for the ham and vegetable croissant.
And 2 Prosecco's.
The croissant was €5.50, about £4.70, and the 2 bottles of Prosecco came to €15, which is about £12.80. Oh, what's that in the background? Okay, this will be the last time I do this, I promise. Surprisingly though, the caviar ham and vegetable croissant combo wasn't actually that bad. I guess the vegetables might have something to do with it, or maybe because this wasn't heated. That's not to say I'd recommend it, so I'm still gonna wash it down with a bit of Prosecco. Here's to the final flight. Cheers. There's a toilet at the front of the cabin, and just like all the other flights, it's super easy to access without disturbing the other passenger in row 1 since there's so much space in front of the seat.
It's another standard toilet here. I don't really have anything else to say apart from I'm going to use it, so I'll see you back at the seat.
I spent the rest of the flight finishing my drinks and watching YouTube videos on my phone. It's actually quite surprising how quickly the time passes on these flights when you're that much more comfortable. When I was taking the not recorded return flights of the same length in randomly allocated seats without the extras, it definitely felt like they took longer and were obviously less comfortable. It wasn't long until we had started our descent into Warsaw, where the low-cost first-class battle will end. Make sure you stick around to the end to hear my final thoughts and recommendations. The total cost of the Wizz flight with all the extras came to £250.83p, the most expensive of the three airlines.
Just got off the third and final flight with Wizz Air. Again, it was a pretty good flight, and I think the biggest thing that made a difference was having that spare seat next to me. But now let's go have a look at the final results and see who the winner of the ultra low-cost carrier battle is.
Okay, so which low-cost carrier provides the best first-class experience? The pricing across all three was pretty similar. easyJet at $232, Ryanair at $208, and Wizz Air at $250. Honestly, after having flown all three, speaking purely about the onboard experience, they're all pretty much the same, but that's actually a good thing. I'll explain in a second. When it comes to the ground experience, I have a stronger opinion. Let's start on board. I feel that as long as you've got a row 1 seat with a spare seat next to you, you're going to have a pretty comfortable flight. And if you're willing to take a chance, you might not even need to reserve the seat next to you, since most people aren't paying for row 1 seats, so a lot of the time they end up being empty regardless. The good news is, with the onboard experience being roughly the same across all three, you've got a huge choice of destinations and can pick the best price between the different airlines. The price of the onboard food and drinks were all pretty similar, with Wizz being the cheapest, and I personally thought Ryanair had the best tasting sandwich and Prosecco. I don't think priority boarding is particularly worth it. Apart from Ryanair, it was pretty expensive, costing more than the actual ticket price. And on all 3 of my flights, so many people have paid for this extra that you wouldn't get the benefit anyway. The only thing to be mindful of when skipping this is your overhead bin space. Regarding airports, Gatwick probably offers the best ground experience, being the largest. There's plenty of shopping and dining options in the main terminal area, which is also pretty spacious if you don't want to use a lounge. But if you did, you've got a lot of lounges to choose from at different price points. Stansted, I've never really liked this airport, and my opinion hasn't changed at all. If anything, I like it even less now. The main terminal area is way too crowded, and so is the only lounge, which wasn't great either. I know a lot of people love to hate on Luton, but I don't mind it. It is fairly small, but never gets too busy in my experience, and there's a choice of 2 lounges, both of which are decent. I'd say fast track security is definitely worth it across the board. It's a few extra quid and saves you a lot of time. I also hate queuing. Overall, for me at least, the airport and ground experience made more of a difference than the flight itself. So preferably fly from Gatwick, which operates flights for all 3 of the airlines, get fast track, pick a lounge you like the look of, and enjoy all of the extras on board. But I will end the video on this note. The total cost of each of these flights one way were all £200-ish. Flying British Airways short-haul business class one way within Europe can also often be in the £200 range for a fair amount, not all, of their destinations. So once you've added all the extras with the low-cost carriers, it might work out the same price as flying BA, which will give you a more premium experience. I'd love to hear about everyone's experience with low-cost carriers. Let me know your cheapest or most expensive ticket with them, how the ground experience was at the airport, any nightmare stories or funny ones. And as always, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Till next time.